The night was cold in the Colorado desert when the sound of a steel door slammed shut inside ADX Florence. For a moment, the entire tier echoed with the thunder of iron against concrete. A prisoner had hurled his food tray through the slot, the metal crashing into the corridor. Guards in heavy gear rushed to the scene, red alarm lights spinning above their heads. The man inside screamed, his voice bouncing off the thick walls, "This place is built to bury us alive." For outsiders watching on the monitors, this was the chilling reminder of why ADX is called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. And then, as if on cue, another alarm started to flash 2 units down. Something else was happening. The control room cameras cut between cells, guards bracing for a possible chain reaction. The question hung in the air, was this a protest, a breakdown, or the beginning of something far worse? Far from the chaos inside, ADX Florence sits quietly in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Built in 1994, its walls rise from the earth like a fortress, surrounded by miles of open land. From a distance, it looks like a simple concrete complex. But those who know its secrets understand that it is designed to be the most secure prison in America. Nicknamed the Alcatraz of the Rockies, ADX got its title not only because of its extreme isolation, but because of its reputation. No one escapes, and no one hides from the system of control that defines life inside. Every angle of the facility is planned with military precision. Guard towers with bulletproof glass overlook every yard. Fences are layered with motion sensors and razor wire. Even the location itself, hours away from any major city, was chosen so escape would mean certain capture in the barren Colorado desert. Inside, inmates are divided into special housing units depending on risk. Some live in near total solitary, with meals passed through a slot, and only 1 hour outside in a small concrete pen with a grated roof. Others are classified differently, based on behavior, gang affiliation, or the severity of their crimes. The Bureau of Prisons uses this classification system to make sure violent leaders, cartel bosses, terrorists, or gang commanders, are cut off from their followers. Many people on the outside imagine ADX as a place of constant riots or chaos. In reality, it's the opposite. Silence is the rule. Inmates rarely see one another face to face. Even during the rare yard time, prisoners are placed in individual cages, with no physical contact. Every move is controlled by remote doors and cameras, but myths persist. Some believe the prison offers hidden comforts, luxury cells or endless TV. The truth is far harsher. The cells are small, the windows are narrow slits pointing only at the sky, and televisions, when allowed, are heavily restricted with limited programming. Reports from former inmates and journalists describe the crushing monotony of a life measured in minutes of sunlight and the sound of your own voice echoing back at you. ADX has held some of the most infamous prisoners in U.S. history. Terrorists like Ramzi Youssef, the 1993 World Trade Center bomber, and cartel kingpin Joaquín, El Chapo, Guzmán have been locked behind its steel doors. Each was sent here for one reason: they were too dangerous to be held anywhere else. The prison is so secretive that even guards have said in interviews they sometimes feel like they are running a machine, not supervising people. It's like watching ghosts, one officer once explained. Back in the control room, the alarms had not stopped. Guards now stood at multiple cells, radios buzzing with urgent updates. The red glow washed over the faces of the officers, their voices sharp but controlled. On one monitor, a prisoner's fists pounded his cell wall, over and over again. Another screen showed a figure standing motionless, his face hidden in shadow, staring straight into the camera as though he knew someone was watching. The silence after the pounding ended was worse than the noise. The alarms kept flashing, and a guard whispered, "This isn't just one man acting out. Something bigger is coming." The screen cut to black, and the story of the Alcatraz of the Rockies was only beginning. The alarms pulsed through the sterile halls of ADX Florence, their red glow painting the concrete like warning blood. Guards moved swiftly, keys jingling on belts, radios buzzing with clipped commands. Inside one cell, a man pressed his forehead against the tiny window slit, whispering to himself. Down another corridor, fists beat against steel doors in rhythmic defiance. The control room cameras caught it all, but there was no shouting from the staff, no panic. This was ADX. Control was absolute, or so it was meant to be. As the alarms faded, the prison settled back into its heavy silence. The truth about ADX Florence was that outbursts rarely lasted long. Inmates were too cut off from each other to sustain rebellion. The design itself was the weapon: layers of concrete, remote control doors, and silence that smothered communication. The myth of chaos was just that, a myth. Instead, monotony ruled. Every day followed the same pattern. At dawn, a guard slid a tray through the slot: eggs, oatmeal, maybe powdered milk. Prisoners ate alone, staring at walls painted a dull, pale shade meant to break the spirit rather than comfort it. Hours dragged on, marked only by the scrape of food slots and the buzz of surveillance cameras. At mid-afternoon, some inmates were granted an hour of yard time, a small outdoor pen about the size of a dog kennel, its ceiling covered by metal grating. Prisoners walked in circles, craning their necks for a patch of blue sky, knowing that even this brief freedom was a reminder of how little they controlled. Inside their cells, coping became an art form. Some did endless push-ups, others read legal documents over and over. A few talked to themselves, holding conversations that never ended. Psychologists warned of SHU syndrome, a collapse of mental health caused by too much isolation. Inmates described hearing voices, feeling detached from their bodies, or losing track of time completely. One man said, "The walls start to talk back after a while." Outside these walls, the public often imagined luxury. Rumors swirled about televisions in every cell, or that high-profile inmates lived with comforts hidden from view. The reality was far more restricted. Yes, there were televisions, but they offered only limited, heavily monitored channels: documentaries, education programs, sometimes religious services. And even that access could be cut if rules were broken. The myth of constant violence also collapsed under closer look. At ADX Florence, there were no sprawling brawls in yards, no riots in crowded dorms. Violence still happened, but in sharp, calculated bursts: an inmate slashing his own arm, another striking a guard through a food slot. The prison's design prevented large-scale fights, but it could not stop the battles prisoners fought inside their own minds. To guards, ADX was both fortress and burden. Some officers admitted in public reports that the stress wore on them, too. Walking through endless corridors of silence, supervising men who never spoke, left them uneasy. A few described the facility as a warehouse for broken souls. Yet, it was effective. Since its opening in 1994, ADX Florence had never had a successful escape. Its layered security, the remote desert location, the motion sensors, the constant surveillance, made it nearly impossible. This was why the media called it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Back in the control room, the night shift officers exchanged tense glances. The alarms had stopped, but one camera feed still showed something unusual: an inmate sitting perfectly still on the edge of his bunk, staring directly into the lens. For hours, he didn't move, didn't eat, didn't speak. His eyes locked on the camera as though he knew someone was watching, as though he was sending a message without words. A guard leaned closer to the monitor and muttered, "He hasn't blinked in 30 minutes. Suddenly, the screen flickered. The red alarm lights began to flash again, this time in 3 separate units at once. Officers froze, realizing this wasn't just a random act of defiance. Something was happening across the prison, and they had no idea how the prisoners were coordinating it.